Sunday. Now, Pat O'Brien.
Thank you, and hi, everybody. Today's Sports Sunday has a distinctly continental flair as we bring you satellite coverage from France and Italy. From Campione d'Italia on the shores of Lake Lugano, Gene Hatcher puts his WBA World Junior Welterweight crown on the line against Ubaldo Sacco. For Hatcher, Mad Dog, as they call him back home in Fort Worth, Texas, this is an important fight. He feels that critics are second-guessing his championship credentials, and today on national television he hopes to put all those doubts to rest. The biggest doubter, though, is today's challenger, Ubaldo Sacco. The Argentinian clearly feels he was robbed in the first match, and we might say that today's fight is Sacco's vendetta. Another man with a clear sense of mission today is France's Bernard Hinault. His goal, which he has pursued with single-minded dedication, is the addition of a fifth yellow jersey to add to his wardrobe. But America's Greg LeMond, who finished third last year despite bronchitis and leg problems, is looking to improve upon that performance, and we'll have same-day coverage of the finale later on. And they're also riding bikes, stationary bikes that is, in NFL training camps around the country as players seek to work back into condition and injured players look to regain their form. Among them, Billy Sims, all-pro running back of the Detroit Lions, will have his story. And as usual, we'll keep you up to date on all the latest sports news. The biggest story earlier today, Sandy Lyle won the British Open by one stroke over David Graham. And we'll begin our day with the latest from the Tour de France. John Tesh, Phil Liggett, and Eric Heiden will join us from Paris when Sports Sunday continues here on CBS.
CBS Sports Sunday is sponsored by Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. Subaru, inexpensive and built to stay that way. And by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
The Champs-Élysées in Paris waits as the crown jewel, the finish line, for the most prestigious bicycle race in the world. Arriving near the champion is something Frenchman Bernard Hinault has done 4 times. The 30-year-old son of a railway worker entered this year's race confident, with an ever-present smile, and early in the Tour became accustomed to wearing yellow as the Tour's overall leader. 24-year-old American Greg LeMond has come here for his second tour. These are the early pictures of the superstars who ride bicycles. In 3 weeks, the pictures have changed.
Do you want me to punch you in the face?
A wounded Bernard Hinault after a horrible crash. LeMond's tears of anger. The constant overpowering attention for Hinault.
Your turn.
The blinding exhaustion. It's a battle that has already left its marks. This is the story of a man full of fire and with the power in his mind and his legs to ignite the roads of France. The man the French call the Blaireau, the Badger. The 30-year-old Breton who has yanked millions from their homes to build a gauntlet, a pathway to history for their national hero. 4 times the Tour has fallen to Hinault. He rides this year to become only the 3rd man ever to win 5. From across the ocean has come the blonde-haired, blue-eyed American, Greg LeMond, who's moved his family to Europe so he can train with the very best. His raw talent and lust for competition have made him the best American in history. And now this penultimate pair rides together on the same team, the American and the Frenchman, looking to dominate the Tour de France on a team put together by Bernard Hinault. Hinault and his first lieutenant command a group of 10 riders strong, who always seem to be riding at the front. They're called La Viclaire and have rolled over their competition here in the Tour like a freight train balanced on 2 wheels. The La Viclaires lead a whirling swarm of the best of the rest in the world, all of whom cannot win, albeit not even finish this hellish adventure. Then is the Tour de France. It's a race over cobblestone roads. And it's It's a quest over treacherous mountain passes with millions of spectators watching. They come to see a 23-day journey through all of France. And is it really just men racing bicycles? Hello everyone, I'm John Tesh, and welcome to our final day of coverage of the Tour de France bicycle race. A race which will finish right here along the Champs-Élysées in Paris later on this afternoon. Already hundreds of thousands have gathered to watch the finish. It's hard to believe that the Tour began 23 days ago. Those who managed to finish it today will have covered 2,567 long miles. And through it all, one thing would appear certain. The winner, the man who crosses the line in the yellow jersey, will be from the team La Claire. And with more, here's my colleague Eric Ardiden.
Cycling teams in the Tour de France consist of 10 members. Most riders are specifically paid and hired to work for the team star. La Claire has in Bernard Hinault and Greg LeMond two of the world's best cyclists. That's a problem. 2 stars, 2 quarterbacks, and only one can cross this finish line in the yellow jersey and win the Tour de France. Now, early in the Tour and through the Alps, it looked as though Bernard Hinault could coast to an easy 5th Tour de France victory. But in the Tour de France, there are no certainties, and anything can happen.
It was last Saturday as the powerful quarterback of the La Claires, Bernard Hinault, rode comfortably toward the town of Saint-Étienne, displaying his yellow leader's jersey across the rolling countryside for all of France to see. American Greg LeMond, 5 minutes 23 seconds back in the standings, was in second place and making a bid to chip away some time. While Hinault was comfortable to stay in the chase group, his leader's jersey was safe from harm. LeMond's group finished about a minute and a half ahead. But the drama of the day, of the Tour, was yet to unfold. And it involved the yellow jersey. Hinault was in the middle of the pack on the turn. The crash left a deep cut on Hinault's head. He had broken his nose. Since he had crashed within 1 kilometer of the finish line, he would be counted a legal finisher. Hinault knew that, and he didn't have to get back on his bike. It was a statement he was making to himself, to his fans, to the most grueling bike race in the world. His trip to the hospital lasted only 1 night, and when he returned the next day, it was again as the Badger.
Je pense que puisqu'il me reste mes 2 jambes, mes 2 bras, ce sera encore difficile.
As long as I have 2 arms and 2 legs, it will be very difficult for them.
The Alps behind, the Pyrenees ahead. Bernard Hinault still has 789 miles to Paris. Today is the most critical day for Bernard Hinault. Everyone wants to know how badly he's hurt, so he must protect his body and his teammates protect his lead. One teammate makes sure he has plenty of water and takes up the rear on bottle patrol. While in the front, the rest are building a force field to help repel any attacks on the yellow jersey. For Hinault, today is full of questions. How well will he be able to continue in what is still a grueling race ahead, and can he keep his lead? For any doubts that he may have, his teammates are there to relieve them, and until he recovers, they will happily carry the load.
So the La Claire freight train rolls along with hopes that they'll be able to climb into the Pyrenees with that golden fleece under lock and key. Upcoming, the Pyrenees Mountains and the ultimate test for Bernard Hinault. The Tour de France is on the road all day, every day, with only 1 night's rest between races. And a man who's covered this thing 13 times is my colleague, Phil Liggett.
Well, John, just like you and I go to work, the riders in the Tour de France go to the office too, but their office is the Highway of France, and a routine day for them begins at 9 o'clock in the morning and finishes at 5 at night. The only difference is, of course, that they cannot afford to go back or take a lunch break, because once they're racing through to the finish. The big thing about the Tour de France is, if you don't get to the end of your working day, then you'll never see the yellow jersey in Paris.
Check under that hood, sir.
And life at the back of the race is often as busy as at the front. And if there's sign of the body cracking up, then a freezing cold spray might help a bit. The bicycles too have a pretty rough time, so extra parts are added as this office rolls along. And if you don't agree with the results so far, then call in on the office manager and complain. You may get nowhere, but you've got the problem off your chest. Pascal Simon reports sick. No time off, but some help. Nice suntan, Lotto man. Pity it's not all over. Still, this'll help. A change of socks? Most do this before going to work. Sunflowers, well, they grow well round here. And now I know why. You've got to keep going, but no reason why you can't put your feet up. It's time for a snack.
Bon appetit.
Day 19. The Pyrenees provide the challenge for those brave enough to climb into the clouds on bicycles. The Tour's leader, Bernard Hinault, the face of a man who's already survived one headfirst crash, and now the concentration of a champion who knows well the Pyrenees mountains. At 3:38 behind Hinault is Lamond. Greg's mountain training has prepared him well for today's race. And on a rival team, 26-year-old Stephen Roche from Dublin, Ireland, whose climbing skills make him now the only threat to the La Vie-Claire machine. Who are the climbers and who are the pretenders? The topography here will give everyone the answer. With 634 miles to go before they reach Paris, 29 cyclists have already decided they've had enough. This race begins in one of France's largest cities, Toulouse, 131 miles, and it's considered the single most difficult mountain race in the Tour de France. The most telling climb comes near the end of the race. It's the Col de Tourmalet, where the men race to the highest elevation in this year's Tour, 7,000 feet. The trip straight back down readies them for the last climb up to the winter resort of Les Ardiden. It's expected to take 7.5 hours to complete. And with the hiking ahead, no one was in any hurry to burn out in the early going. The first part of the race saw the pack together, snaking its way through the foothills of the Pyrenees. But even though the riding appeared relaxed, the riders were not. Bernard Hinault looking like an angry prizefighter the day after. Greg LeMond has no time for chatter with the team car. Uncharacteristic for the American with that boyish demeanor. Wasn't there a time when Greg LeMond and the rest wore early morning smiles? The only playful man on a bicycle today, Stephen Roche, who was one of the top mountain men, suddenly found a lot of attention. It's as if the mountain knew this was the day to welcome the Tour de France. For as the serpent of cyclists left the valley and the gallery waited, the foul weather danced across the peaks to a devilish symphony. The worst possible conditions for the most arduous climb of the Tour de France. Through the fog, and barely visible, a bright piece of yellow. But Hinault and his pack were falling behind. Standing along the roadway, you could feel it. There was something more than an opaque mist hanging in the air. A message read on the face of Bernard Hinault had he truly recovered from the crash. The hunger in the legs of Greg LeMond, now climbing ahead of Hinault. Here was a race that could change the overall time standings in one day. Here was a race that could strip Hinault's yellow jersey right off his back. Hinault's coach, Paul Coakley, knew it. Because up ahead was Stephen Roche, helping to carry the American Greg LeMond up the mountain with him.
Greg LeMond, world's number 1 or number 2? What's in the mind of the ambitious American as the call of the Pyrenees is heard only by the strongest? It's every man for himself now, and after being second for most of the Tour, LeMond counters the attack by Stephen Roche, who, at the time bomb of this race, is about to explode. Behind, Hinault's group struggles, and LeMond follows the common enemy. And for the La Vie Claire team, there are now 2 choices. Allow LeMond to go and hope he can beat Roche, or make him slow Roche down. Joined by a Colombian climber, the 3 open up a sizable lead over Hinault. The highest climb gives nothing away, but LeMond and his group have now built an attack with a gap of 1 minute 16 seconds. Hinault, the rider who's covered the course in the best time so far, has seen his early gains eroded by a teammate. LeMond checks with his coach, and on the descent, should he attack or try to slow Roche down and let Hinault catch up? Finally, Hinault reaches the summit. He must be a worried man now. On the hardest day of the Tour, the 9 miles climb up to the ski station of Ardiden holds the answers. No one has ridden it before. The Tour has never been there. It's a secret which will soon be revealed. LeMond thinks he can win the Tour de France, but first he must find the strength on this 5,000 feet climb to break Roche. Fate, is it also on his side? For Roche punches, and LeMond doesn't wait for him or Hinault. To save time, the Irishman grabs a new bicycle and a rather long push uphill, which the referees decided not to see. Roche continues to intrude in a personal battle now between 2 teammates. At last, LeMond is free to prove he is the best. But what about loyalty to his friend and mentor who needs just 1 more win to make history with 5 Tours de France? Doesn't LeMond owe him something?
Does American Greg LeMond owe anyone anything?
And we'll return to the Tour de France in just a moment, but first, a reminder that still to come, the battle for the WBA World Junior Welterweight crown, the rematch between Gene Mad Dog Hatcher and Ubaldo Sacco. It'll take place in a town called Campione d'Italia, which is an Italian enclave surrounded by Swiss territory on the shores of Lake Lugano. Tim Ryan is there to set the stage for today's big rematch.
A lake of tranquility, Lake Lugano in the foothills of the Swiss Alps near the Italian border. In summertime,